Bulavanakana, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to, of course, acknowledge the representatives from the World Bank and IUCN, all the other stakeholders that are here from the various government departments, ministries, the discipline forces, and the civil society. It's a pleasure to be here with you today as we prepare to finalize Fiji's national ocean policy. On the world stage, Fiji is generally referred to as a small island developing state, which we are. But when you take a bigger, bluer view of the world, there is nothing small at all about Fiji's responsibilities. We are actually a large ocean state with over 1.3 million square kilometers of sea under our protection. And we've led the global oceans management movement from its inception. It was Fiji's first ever ambassador to the United Nations, the late great Satya Nandan, who personally led the international charge in finalizing the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. Decades on from that achievement, Fijians have been propelled once again to the forefront of oceans leadership as we find ourselves on the front lines of our oceans degradation. We see firsthand every day how ocean ecosystems are buckling under the strain of a warming world, pollution, overfishing, and other reckless abuse from humankind. In the face of these new and worsening threats, this national ocean policy will serve as our compass towards sustainable oceans management, at home through action and abroad through advocacy. There's a lot I could say this morning about the ancient connection Fijians share with the ocean and about the tragedy of watching oceanic life spiral towards extinction, how our reefs are disappearing, how overfishing is stripping our oceans bare, and of how Fijian livelihoods are being lost to warming, acidification, and unregulated seas. But most of us are well familiar with the scale of crisis we face. The focus of this policy is not to rehash the challenges before us. It is about how we, as the Fijian people, as businesses, as civil society organizations, and as a government, are going to practically go about solving them. It is about how we leverage traditional and new knowledge to take on contemporary and emerging problems. It is about leading by example in addressing the complex consequences of ocean-climate nexus. It is about how we will build a blue economy that transforms the ocean into a more sustainable source of prosperity. It is about choosing a different future for the ocean. Rather than see them collapse into lifeless wastelands, with the right management, ocean ecosystems can become more bountiful than they have ever been. It is difficult to put an exact figure to the value of the blue economy, but most experts estimate it is worth around $1.5 trillion a year. In contrast, less than 1% of that sum is invested back into ocean management. Ladies and gentlemen, that's exploitation, plain and simple. And it's costing us badly. If we look at the fisheries sector, for example, the lack of reinvestment is leaving billions on the table. To be exact, the World Bank and FAO recently revealed that ocean fisheries mismanagement costs us up to $100 billion annually in lost economic potential. Sector by sector, the story is much the same. Humanity has treated our oceans as an inexhaustible resource. We have failed at making simple, common sense investments back in ocean health. Meanwhile, the science has become painfully clear. The only ocean we can really afford in the future is the one which is sustainably managed. For the first time in a very long time, due to the devastating economic impact of COVID-19, humanity's assault on the ocean is actually relenting. But that's not progress we can count on. Even as the world's most developed economies have put forward tens of trillions of dollars in economic stimulus to revive their crippled economies, the ocean economy has so far been an afterthought. So for all the celebratory headlines that a new vaccine will soon bring life back to normal, we should pause and consider what that means for the planet. Do we want to rush back into the one-sided, short-sighted exploitation of our ocean ecosystems? Do we want to relax restrictions on oceans management for the sake of immediate economic growth? Fiji, of course, will not settle for that desperate recourse. Neither should the rest of the world. Instead, we must use this opportunity to bring big blue ideas to bear in the global recovery. Though small island economies like our own have been hardest hit by this pandemic, we remain committed now more than ever to a blue recovery and a sustainable future. To get there, we should make space for innovative solutions, including the use of blue bonds, which we believe can play a key role in our economic comeback. And we've just been talking to Lord Goldsmith from UK this morning about the blue bonds and how we can work together with the UK in getting out some new blue bonds. At the heart of this policy rests Fiji's commitment to the 100% sustainable management of our exclusive economic zone, or EEZ, and its 30% designation as marine protected areas by 2030. Given the size of our EEZ, we aim to work with our development partners to realize that commitment, including through our involvement in the United Kingdom's 30 by 30 initiative. For Fiji, a sustainable ocean is an ocean free from pollution, a well-mapped ocean, a healthy ocean of interlinked habitats which provide food and bounty through aquaculture and regulated fishing, an ocean of net zero emissions, including in shipping, an ocean which is open to scientific exploration and understanding, and an ocean which remains a source of identity, of culture, and of fulfilling livelihoods of our people. That, of course, ladies and gentlemen, is a bold agenda. I'll tell you now, though, however, government cannot achieve those aims alone. That is why Fiji's national ocean policy is also defined by its multi-agency approach. It taps synergies throughout government and between government and the private sector, civil society, and community-level organizations. We recognize the folly of a purely top-down approach. Instead, effective implementation of sustainable ocean management must occur from the feet up. Every ordinary citizen should be armed with the same working knowledge as oceans experts, and that knowledge should guide the way they run their businesses, the food they eat, where and when we fish, the size of the fish they catch to sell or eat, and it should inspire them to expend the small effort it takes to properly dispose of waste in the bin rather than on the beach, in the river, in the mangrove, on the side of the road. The National Ocean Policy will be legislated through our upcoming climate change bill and highlights elements from the existing national legislation such as the Environment Management Act, the Marine Spaces Act, the Offshore Fisheries Management Act, and many others. In many cases, we do not need to reinvent the wheel to ingrain ocean action in our development. Stronger legislation and governance on areas such as tuna catch could allow Pacific Island countries to gain an additional $250 million a year. The National Ocean Policy builds upon existing legislation and streamlines implementation through a more effective and efficient allocation of resources. And in fact, from today onwards, we are publicly launching the second round of consultations on the climate change bill, and it will be available through online. And for the next at least 4 to 6 weeks, we expect to get more feedback from members of the public. Anyone who was in Madrid at COP25 can testify to the sleepless nights Team Fiji spent seeking to ingrain the Oceans Pathway Partnership in the international climate negotiations. Our work through the Commonwealth Blue Charter, the Ocean Panel, and through this new ocean policy are centered around the Pacific-driven recognition that the climate crisis is an oceans crisis as well. Because without urgent and drastic cuts to carbon emission, our work to save the ocean will end before it ever begins. Before I finish off, I'd like to all of us to undertake a very important task today of endorsing the National Ocean Policy. I'd like to thank our technical partners, the World Bank, the IUCN, and the Vibrant Oceans Initiative. Your assistance and insight has been invaluable. Fiji may indeed be a large ocean state, but we should be mindful that our patch of the Pacific is still only a small part of a much larger connected blue economy. Our future and the future of our ocean still rest in the collective hands of the world, particularly the largest, more developed nations. We can lead through our advocacy on the world stage. We can make the moral case by testifying to the tragedy Fijians are living. But we speak far more powerfully through our own actions. By actually building a sustainable and prosperous ocean society ourselves, the power of our example can inspire the world to follow suit. Ultimately, that is the goal of this national ocean policy, to build a stronger, bluer, and more sustainable Fijian economy that helps build a wave of momentum that lifts our ocean, our climate, and the world economy onto a more sustainable path. I'd like to thank you all very much for your attendance today, and I wish you all a very good day. Thank you.